Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do. The podcast talks about human development and psychology to help you figure out a little bit more, maybe, why you do what you do. Last time we were talking about behaviorist techniques, reinforcement, and punishment. So we're going to kind of catch up on corporal punishment, which I am personally against. Corporal punishment has been defined as the use of physical force with the intention of causing a child to experience pain, but not injury, for the purpose of correction or control of the child's behavior. It can include spanking, hitting, slapping, pinching, shaking, which can be fatal to infants, and other physical acts. Corporal punishment is a pervasive part of the socialization of many children. Many people believe that it is more effective than other remedies and harm less if done in moderation by loving parents. 100% against that. That is not true. And what you're teaching your child is just that you're bigger and you can force them to do, what you want them to do. However, a growing body of evidence suggests that these beliefs are untrue, that corporal punishment can have serious negative consequences, and that it should not be used. Got that? It should not be used. Power assertion, induction, and withdrawal of love. Looking at reinforcement and punishment alone may be an oversimplification of how parents influence behavior. Because, like I said, everything you do influences your child's behavior. They learn what they live. So you need to be a good role model for your children. Contemporary research has focused on three broader categories of discipline: power assertion, induction, and temporary withdrawal of love. Power assertion is intended to stop or discourage undesirable behavior through physical or verbal enforcement of parental control. And my father used that quite a bit. It includes demands, threats, withdrawal of privileges, spanking, and other punishments. These were the kinds of techniques used by the feared maid who took care of Isabel Allende and her brothers. Inductive techniques are designed to encourage desirable behavior or discourage undesirable behavior by reasoning with a child. They include setting limits, demonstrating logical consequences of an action, explaining, discussing, and getting ideas from the child about what is fair. Withdrawal of love may include ignoring, isolating, or showing dislike for the child. And my mother did that quite a bit. The choice and effectiveness of a disciplinary strategy may depend on the parent's personality, the child's personality and age, and the quality of their relationship, as well as on culturally based customs and expectations. So you heard it from psychologists, corporal punishment is not good. Corporal punishment not only makes the child feel overwhelmed, feel like they're being, controlled. Children die every year. I mean, we've seen it on the news time and time again where, like a woman left the boyfriend with the kid, or they left the kid with the babysitter, and they were perfectly fine with corporal punishment, and they beat the child to death. Now, most parents are like, oh, no, that doesn't happen. Well, yes, it does. And if it's never happened in your life to where, someone beat you to the point you were bruised or whatever, then you got lucky, because it does happen. So corporal punishment, in my opinion, should be taken off the table. If you have to resort to that, then, you're not very smart. The case against corporal punishment. Spare the rod and spoil the child may sound old-fashioned, But corporal punishment has become a live issue today. While some professionals view corporal punishment as verging on child abuse, others defend it as a necessary or desirable in moderation when prudently administered by loving parents. Corporal punishment has diminished in many European countries since the passage of laws against it in Sweden in 1979. See, the Swedes are way ahead of us on that one. Followed by Austria, Croatia, Cyprus, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Israel, Italy, Latvia, and Norway. So in all of these countries, it's against the law to corporally punish, aka spank, your child. America's way behind on these things. Yet in the United States, some professionals and politicians advocate corporal punishment more strongly than ever. In 1999, the Arizona and Arkansas legislatures adopted resolutions urging parents and teachers to exercise their right to use it. All states allow parents to do it, though some insist that it be reasonable, appropriate, moderate, or necessary, and some recognize that excessive corporal punishment can be abusive. Well, how magnanimous of them to realize that it can be. But like I talked about, my little son got all swat on the butt. That's because, I was scared to death that the boy was going to get killed because he was like walking out in front of a car. So that was just like a gut reaction. I did not beat the child. I just, hey, grabbed him by the arm and did that. I said, you do not run out in front of cars, But, it's, my husband wanted to do the paddle. He wanted to, do the belt or whatever. And it's like, I don't like this. I don't want this. I'd rather talk to the child. I'd rather put the child on timeout and explain it to him. So we got in some fights and had some problems about discipline when I was raising my kids, until the point where we actually got divorced. And then I raised the kids how I wanted to raise the kids when they were here. And I wished that they were here all the time, but it didn't work out that way. Some form of corporal or bodily punishment is widely based on U.S. infants, and it is virtually universal among parents of toddlers. And my father tells a story where my little brother cried too much in his crib, and so he spanked him. And after that, he didn't cry. Wow. Okay, so big man, you just beat a baby's ass, and he didn't cry no more. Isn't that a dang shame? You basically told this child that their feelings, their needs were not okay, and they were going to get beat for having them. So, of course, for the rest of his life, he's pretty much quiet. And that's a shame. In interviews with a nationally representative sample of 991 parents in 1995, 35% reported using corporal punishment, using usually hand slapping, on infants during the previous year, and fully 94% and 3 and 4-year-olds. About half of the parents continued to use corporal punishment by the time their children were 12. Huh! 1/3 at age 14. And 13% at age 17. That would have been a fight. But evidently there's parents who are still doing this. I mean, to me, that's nuts. That's nuts. Why do so many parents use corporal punishment? Probably because it does get children to comply for a short time. However, a large body of research, including analysis of 88 studies conducted over the past 6 decades, consistently finds negative short-term and long-term outcomes from its use. Apart from the risk of escalation into injury or abuse, these outcomes may include, in childhood, increased physical aggressiveness because the child is acting out what they've experienced. Antisocial behavior because, again, they're acting out what they've experienced. And delinquency, again. Lack of moral internalization because they don't have to think about their morals. The morals are beaten into them. So they have not internalized morals, poor parent-child relationships, of course, and diminished mental health. Because if you teach the child that they're bad and, you're beating on them all the time because they're so bad, they're going to believe that. They're going to think that no matter if they're the best person in the world. And it's going to take them a long time to get that shit sorted out. So just don't do it. Outcomes in adulthood can include aggression, criminal or antisocial behavior, anxiety disorders, depression, alcohol problems, and a partner or child abuse. Because again, you learn what you live. Most of this research was cross-sectional or retrospective, or did not consider that the spanked children may have been aggressive in the first place, and that their age and aggressive behavior or some other factor might have led their parents to spank them. Also, corporal punishment rarely occurs in isolation, so we cannot be sure that the observed outcomes are attributable to it, and not to some other form of discipline, such as threats, timeouts, or withdrawal of privileges. Excuse me, got a little cold. Since 1997, several large, nationally representative landmark studies have sought to overcome the former defect by taking account of the child's own behavior at the time of first measurement. These studies, which included youngsters ranging from age 3 through adolescence, found that corporal punishment is counterproductive. The more a child receives, the more aggressive or antisocial the child's behavior becomes. So, if you want to discipline your child, discipline should be teaching. It should not be beating. Because what you're doing by doing that is creating an aggressive, antisocial child. The more likely a child is to show antisocial or other maladaptive behavior as a child and as an adult. Why is this so? One answer is that physical punishment stimulates aggressive behavior by leading children to imitate the punisher and to consider infliction of pain an acceptable response to problems. Corporal punishment also may arouse anger and resentment, causing children to focus on their own hurts rather than on the wrong they have done to others, and making them less receptive to parental teachings. Furthermore, as with any punishment, the effectiveness of spanking diminishes with repeated use. Children may feel free to misbehave if they are willing to take the consequences. Reliance on physical punishments may weaken parents' authority when children become teenagers, too big and strong to spank, even if spanking were appropriate. Spanking may even inhibit cognitive development, according to data on 2 to 4-year-olds and 5 to 9-year-olds from the National Longitudinal Study of Youth. Children whose mothers use little or no corporal punishment, such as spanking or hand slapping, during a 2-week period showed greater cognitive gains than children who were hit. Opponents of corporal punishment are not against disciplining children, but they maintain there are more effective, less risky or harmful ways to do it. The American Academy of Pediatrics Committee on Psychological Aspects of Child and Family Health urges parents to avoid spanking. Instead, the committee suggests such inductive methods as teaching children to use words to express feelings, giving them choices and helping them evaluate the consequences, and modeling orderly behavior and cooperative conflict resolution. The committee recommends positive reinforcement to encourage desired behaviors. A short term to give the child a chance to cool down, or removal of privileges to discourage undesired behaviors, all within the context of a positive, supporting, loving parent-child environment. And like I said, that's we had the chart, the tally chart. And if you misbehave, you got a bad tally. If you were good, you got a good tally. So you got rewarded with your, allowance. If you did not good that week, you didn't get any. If you did good, you got some. So, it's easier to teach your children when you're disciplining your children. And then they learn. And then they understand why this is a bad behavior. Whereas if you're just smacking them, like I said, you're just teaching them, you're bigger and can force them to do what you want them to do. And it's going to make them be aggressive. It's going to make them be antisocial. And probably not as smart as they could have been if you weren't beating on them. So just don't do it. Oh, excuse me. Like I said, I've got a cold. Oh, God. Parenting styles. Why does Stacy hit and bite the nearest person when she cannot finish a jigsaw puzzle? What makes David sit and sulk when he cannot finish the puzzle, even though his teacher offers to help him? Why does Consuelo work on the puzzle for 20 minutes and then shrug and try another? Why are children so different in their responses to the same situation? Temperament is a major factor, of course, but some research suggests that styles of parenting may affect children's competence in dealing with their world. And of course it does. The better parent the better parent you have, the more able you are to deal with the world. Baumrind's model. Are some ways of socializing children more effective than others? In pioneering research, Diana Baumrind studied 103 preschool children from 95 families. Through interventions, testing, and home studies, she measured how the children were functioning, identified 3 parenting styles, and described typical behavior patterns of children raised according to each. Baumrind's findings were correlational and did not consider innate factors, such as temperament. However, Baumrind's work and the large body of research it inspired have established strong associations between each parenting style and a particular set of child behaviors. Because, of course, like I say, the better parent you have, the better child you're going to have. Authoritarian parents, according to Baumrind, value control and unquestioning obedience. They try to make children conform to a set standard of conduct and punish them arbitrarily and forcefully for violating it. They are more detached and less warm than other parents. Their children tend to be more discontented, withdrawn, and distrustful. So, if you're being an authoritarian type of parent, this is the kind of child you're going to raise. Discontented, withdrawn, and distrustful. So if that's not what you want from your child, you need to change your parenting style. Permissive parents value self-expression and self-regulation. They make few demands and allow children to monitor their own activities as much as possible. When they do have to make rules, they explain the reason for them. They consult with children about policy decisions and rarely punish. They are warm, non-controlling, and undemanding. Their preschool children tend to be immature, the least self-controlled, and the least exploratory. I know someone whose parents were like this, and they had kind of a hands-off approach. The children basically abused each other because they were allowed to do whatever they want out in the yard, and parents weren't watching them, didn't care. So, if you're permissive and let the child just kind of do their thing, you're going to end up with an immature, uncontrolled, and unexploratory child. So if you don't want that, you might change your parenting style. Authoritative parents value a child's individuality, but also stress social constraints. They have confidence in their ability to guide children, but they also respect children's independent decisions, interests, opinions, and personalities. And that's the type of parent I was, because I knew mine did it wrong, I knew my husband's did it wrong, and I wanted to do it right. So we took parenting classes and found out what the right way was. They are loving and accepting, but also demand good behavior, are firm in maintaining standards, and are willing to impose limited, judicious punishment when necessary, within the context of a warm, supportive relationship. They explain the reasoning behind their stands and encourage verbal give and take. Their children apparently feel secure in knowing that they are both loved and firmly guided. Preschoolers with authoritative parents tend to be the most self-reliant, self-controlled, self-assertive, exploratory, and content. So that is the best approach, to be an authoritative parent. To be there for your kids, to have, boundaries for your kids, and to explain these things to your child, and have a system of punishment and reward. And that way, the child's going to grow up understanding that it's their behavior that affects their life, not the controlling of the parents or the lack of control. Do your own thing, and then they don't feel like they want to do anything. So, authoritative is the way to go. If you're not sure how to go about that, Google it. You got Google. You don't need encyclopedias like I did. And find out how to do it and do it. Your kid is worth it, and they'll thank you for it later on. Let's see. Cultural factors. Baumrind's categories reflect the dominant North American view of child development and may be misleading when applied to some cultures or socioeconomic groups. Because, like I said, each culture is different. They have their own different values. And unfortunately, some of them might not be quite up where the more developed countries are in child rearing. Among Asian Americans, obedience and strictness, rather than being associated with harshness and domination, seem to have more to do with caring, concern, and involvement, and with maintaining family harmony. Traditional Chinese culture, with its emphasis on respect for elders, stresses adults' responsibility to maintain the social order by teaching children socially proper behavior. This obligation is carried out through firm control of the child, and even by physical punishment if necessary. So their culture is very concerned with peace, harmony, so that, the child is to be controlled to keep that peace and harmony by whatever means necessary, and that's a shame. Promoting altruism and dealing with aggression and fearfulness. 3 specific issues are of special concern to parents, caregivers, and teachers of preschool children, are how to promote altruism, curb aggression, and deal with fears that often arise at this age. Because little people do, they get worried about things, and they don't always have the, verbiage to discuss these things. So adults around them kind of have to look and see and notice and kind of intervene a little bit and say, hey, what's going on? And that's, how we learn. Prosocial behavior. Alex, at age 3.5, responded to 2 fellow preschoolers' complaints that they did not have enough modeling clay, his favorite plaything, by giving them half of his. By acting out of concern for another person with no expectation of reward, Alex was showing altruism. Altruistic acts like Alex's often entail cost, self-sacrifice, or risk. Altruism is the heart of prosocial behavior, voluntary activity intended to benefit another. And there's like a whole section of society who's down with that. No, me first, me, my, me and mine. So they don't understand altruistic behavior, and that's a freaking shame, because if more of us were like that, it would be a much better world. Because it ain't all about you. Sorry. Aggression. When Peter roughly snatches a ball away from Tommy, he is interested only in getting the ball, not in hurting or dominating Tommy. This is instrumental aggression, or aggression used as an instrument to reach a goal, the most common type of aggression in early childhood. Between ages 2.5 and 5, children commonly struggle over toys and control of space. Aggression surfaces mostly during social play. Children who fight the most also tend to be the most sociable and competent. In fact, the ability to show some instrumental aggression may be a necessary step on social development. So that shows that they know how to get their needs met, but that's not exactly a socially acceptable way to do that. So it's important to teach your children socially acceptable ways to get what they want, to think, to talk, to ask, instead of just snatch and grab and, maybe hair pulling and fighting the other kid. However, girls may be more aggressive than they seem. They just show aggression differently. And I know a lot of women, their aggression is being passive aggressive or just saying mean things to people because they're uncomfortable with their own aggression. So, they just, do these little passive aggressive little mean things that they say. And we all know what that, is. We know, you don't, if you think you're fooling us, if you think fooling other people with your little passive aggressive mean barbs that you're putting out there, you're wrong. We see you, honey. Boys engage in more overt aggression, physical force or verbal threats, openly directed against a target. Girls commonly practice relational aggression, also called covert, indirect, or psychological aggression, or find it directed against them. This more subtle kind of aggression consists of manipulation and damaging or threatening to damage relationships, reputation, or psychological well-being. It may involve putting down one from a group. Among preschoolers, it tends to be direct and face-to-face. You can't come to my party if you don't give me that toy. In middle childhood and adolescence, relational aggression becomes more sophisticated and indirect. And we know there's been cases of cyberbullying where someone has picked on someone online so much that that person ends up committing suicide. So that is another thing you need to teach your children, that is not okay. And, they don't like to intervene a lot of times, parents, in, girls' little passive-aggressive bullying of each other. But you should. You should step in and say, hey, that's not okay. I heard what you said to so-and-so, and that's not okay. That's all you got to do. You got to teach them that little, trying to keep so-and-so out of your clique or, a little passive-aggressive thing you said to so-and-so is not okay. Sources of aggression. What produces an aggressive child? Why are some children more aggressive than others? And again, we just learned that corporal punishment can make a child more aggressive. Temperament does play a part in making children more aggressive. But in general, children learn what they live. If you use aggression on them, they're going to use aggression on other people. That's just the facts. Triggers of aggression. Exposure to violence, real or televised, can trigger aggression. In a classical social learning experiment, 3 to 6-year-olds individually watched adult models play with toys. Children in one experimental group saw the adult play quietly. The model for a second experimental group began to assemble Tinker toys, but then spent the rest of the 10-minute session punching, throwing, and kicking a life-size inflated doll. A control group did not see any model. After the sessions, the children who were mildly frustrated by seeing toys they were not allowed to play with went into another playroom. The children who had seen the aggressive model and acted much more aggressively than those in the other groups, imitating many of the same things they had seen the model say and do. The children, imitating who had been with the quiet model, excuse me, were less aggressive than the control group. This finding suggests that parents may be able to moderate the effects of frustration by modeling non-aggressive behavior. And that's like when we had started the video games. And I had children of 3 different ages. So I would try to limit the older games for the older kids. But then the other ones were seeing this as well. And eventually I would let them, probably a few years sooner than they needed to, play these games with the brothers. So, you know, it's hard as a parent, you know, to control every little thing that they see or do, but you certainly can. We didn't allow any movies that, you know, they shouldn't have seen until my ex-husband decided to let the young ones watch a horror movie, which, you know, I think was not good for them. They ended up having night terrors and things like that, and I'm pretty sure that had something to do with it, you know. But sometimes you can't tell people things. Influence of culture. How much influence does culture have on aggressive behavior? One research team asked closely matched samples of 30 Japanese and 30 U.S. middle to upper middle class preschoolers to choose pictured solutions to hypothetical conflicts or stressful situations, such as having one's block tower knocked down, having to stop playing and go to bed, being hit, hearing parents argue, or fighting on a jungle gym. The children also were asked to act out and complete such situations using dolls and props. The U.S. children showed more anger, more aggressive behavior and language, and less control of emotions than the Japanese children. So, you know, here in the U.S., there's still a lot of ignorance about child rearing, child psychology, parenting. So, yeah, we have a more violent culture. And, you know, these other countries that have outlawed the abuse and corporal punishment of children, we need to take a page out of their book because it does make a difference. And that's where I'm going to leave you today. So hopefully this helped you think a little bit more about why you do what you do. Until next time.